My parents refused to care for my twins during my emergency surgery because they had concert tickets. I was lying in a hospital bed, bleeding, terrified I might not survive. Their response? "You're becoming a burden, Alyssa." That's when I realized love shouldn't have to beg. My name is Alyssa Bennett. I'm 33 years old, and last Christmas Eve I learned just how alone I really was. I was lying in a hospital bed at Roseview Medical Center in Denver, trying to stay calm as sharp, burning pain shot through my abdomen. The doctor said it was internal bleeding, and I needed emergency surgery. My 2-year-old twins, Mason and Mia, were sitting quietly in the corner with their stuffed animals, completely unaware their world could change in an instant. I called my parents, the only family I had left, and begged them to come watch the kids, just for the night. My mom didn't even hesitate. "Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again," she snapped. "We've had these Stevie Nicks tickets for months." That moment broke something inside me, and somehow it also set something free. As tears silently rolled down my cheeks, Tracy placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "Let me call someone who can help with the kids," she said softly. That's when everything began to shift, not just around me, but inside me, too. And I knew something had to change, for good. I nodded through the tears and whispered, "Yes, please." Tracy stepped out to make the call, and I sat there staring at the screen, the last message from my mum still glowing. "We deserve to enjoy our lives now. You're always dragging us into your problems, Alyssa." Those words hit harder than the pain in my stomach. I had given everything I could to my parents. After Ryan died 6 months ago, I still kept sending the $2,000 every month. I didn't even think twice. I thought that's what family did. You take care of each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. But I guess that belief only went one way. My husband used to say, "We'll build our own kind of family, the kind that actually shows up." And we did, for a while. But when that drunk driver hit him last summer, everything changed. I was suddenly a widow with 2 toddlers and a mortgage. I was grieving, barely sleeping, and still sending money to the people who saw me as a burden. It made no sense. But it's what I'd been taught. Keep giving, even if it hurts. Tracy came back a few minutes later, her voice gentle. "Her name's Elise. She's a trauma nanny, worked with kids at the children's hospital. She can be here in less than an hour." I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not guilt. Something else. A kind of quiet strength I hadn't felt in a long time. "Okay," I said. My voice was barely there, but it was mine. Then I reached for my phone again, hands still trembling, but this time, not from fear, from resolve. I knew what I needed to do next, and I wasn't going to ask for permission. I opened the banking app on my phone and stared at the screen for a long moment. My thumb hovered over the Scheduled Transfers tab, the same one I had tapped every month for the past 3 years. $2,000, like clockwork. Mortgage support, groceries, golf trips, cruises, all the things my parents somehow needed to survive early retirement. I took a deep breath and cancelled the recurring payment. Just like that. Then I typed a message. Simple, clear, no room for negotiation. I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve more than being your afterthoughts. Please don't contact me again. I hit send, set the phone down, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of freedom. A knock at the door pulled me back. Tracy stepped in with a soft smile. "Elise is on her way," she said. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and fear. I didn't know this woman, but already she'd shown more care than the people who raised me. Mason was playing with his toy fire truck, and Mia was curled up next to my hospital blanket, humming to herself. They were too young to know what was happening, too innocent to understand that the people I thought would protect us had chosen a concert instead. As the nurse prepped me for surgery, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "No more guilt. No more pretending. This wasn't about punishment. This was about survival." And in that quiet hospital room, with the machines beeping and my children close by, I made a promise. I would not let them grow up thinking this kind of love was normal. The surgery took longer than expected, and when I finally woke up, everything felt foggy, like I was drifting somewhere between sleep and memory. I could hear soft voices, beeping machines, the hum of the IV pump. My body ached. My throat was dry, but the first thing I saw was Elise, sitting in the corner with Mia asleep in her lap, and Mason playing quietly on the floor. She looked up and smiled gently. "You're okay," she said, her voice calm, steady. I tried to nod, but my head felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Still, I felt safe. The kids were safe. I didn't need to explain or apologize. Elise was just there, present. That's more than I could say for my own parents. Later that day, when I was more alert, Tracy brought me my phone. 27 missed calls, dozens of texts, most of them from my mom and dad, a few from Chloe. The pattern was clear: first confusion, then outrage, then desperation. Not one message asking how the surgery went. Not a single, "Are you okay?" Just frantic concerns about their mortgage, their cruise, their bills. The last message from my dad read, "You can't just cut us off like this." "The cruise is non-refundable, Alyssa." I stared at it, my chest tight but no longer trembling. Then Chloe messaged me privately. "Mom and Dad said you were having some minor procedure." What's going on? Why are they panicking about money? I took a deep breath and told her everything. No filters, no soft edges. Just the truth. Her response came fast. "Oh my God. Alyssa, I had no idea it was an emergency. I would have watched the twins. I'm so sorry." For the first time in days, I let myself breathe deeper. Maybe, just maybe, someone finally saw it all. By the time I was discharged from the hospital 5 days later, my body still felt like it had been through a war. But my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Elise had stayed by the twins the entire time, bringing them to visit during the day and taking them back to my apartment at night so they could sleep in their own beds. She even left little updates for me. Photos, notes, funny things, Mason said. It was the kind of presents I had begged my parents for. And never received. Before I left the hospital, I sat down with a social worker and finalized 2 things. First, I hired Elise as a part-time nanny to help while I recovered. Second, I contacted a lawyer and updated my will, naming a trusted friend as the twins' legal guardian if anything ever happened to me. It was a painful decision, but necessary. I couldn't let my parents have any say in their future, not after what they'd shown me. I also blocked my parents' numbers, completely. I allowed Chloe limited contact, just enough to see if her efforts to reconnect were real. Financially, the change was significant. That $2,000 a month I'd been sending them, it was nearly 1/3 of my income as a freelance graphic designer. Without that burden, I could afford reliable childcare, therapy sessions, and maybe, just maybe, start rebuilding the emergency fund that had been wiped out after Ryan died. The night I got home, I tucked the kids into their beds, made myself a cup of tea, and sat on the couch in the quiet. For the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was taking my life back, one decision at a time. Of course, my parents didn't take silence well. A week after I blocked them, they showed up at my apartment unannounced, standing in the hallway like nothing had happened. My mom wore her usual pearls and a look of forced concern. My dad had that impatient posture I knew too well, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes scanning for control. I cracked the door just enough to speak through it. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady. My mom jumped in with a sugary tone that immediately raised my defenses. "Darling, we've been so worried. You haven't returned our calls. We just wanted to make sure you and the twins were okay." I stared at her for a beat. "We're fine," I said flatly. My dad leaned forward. "It's not just that. We need to talk about this financial situation. The bank called about the mortgage. We had to dip into our cruise savings." That was the moment I knew they still didn't get it. Not a single question about my health. Not a word about the kids. Just complaints about their bills. I took a breath. "I told you I was cutting ties. I meant it." My mom's face pinched. "Sweetheart, we've come to depend on that money. We adjusted our whole lifestyle around your support." I nodded slowly. "Exactly. And when I needed help for the first time, you chose Stevie Nicks over your grandkids. You couldn't even ask if I survived the surgery. That's not support. That's convenience. And I'm done." Just then, Mia peeked around the corner with her stuffed bunny in hand. My mom's voice instantly shifted. "There's my precious girl. Grandma brought presents." I didn't even flinch. "She doesn't know you. And honestly, that's not a bad thing." Then I closed the door. Not with anger, just certainty. A door that should have been closed long ago. The next morning, they came back, but this time, they brought reinforcements. My Aunt Susan, the self-appointed family mediator, stood at my doorstep, holding a casserole dish, like that would magically erase years of damage. "Alyssa, honey," she began through the door I didn't open. "Let's all be reasonable, okay? Your parents are struggling. They need your help." I stood on the other side, arms crossed, heart pounding, but not from guilt this time, from clarity. "They managed their lives just fine before I started sending money," I said, voice calm. "They chose early retirement. They chose the vacations, the boat, the timeshare. That was their plan, not mine." My mom's voice broke in behind her, more desperate now. "We made those choices because you promised to help us." "No," I said, stepping closer to the door. "I offered to help temporarily." "Somehow, you twisted that into a lifetime contract." There was silence. Then my dad's voice, louder, sharper. "We had to cancel our cruise, Alyssa. Do you understand how that feels?" I almost laughed. Canceling a cruise, after everything? "I nearly died in surgery," I said flatly. "And you went to a concert. That's how I feel." They kept knocking, pleading, bargaining. I walked away and let them talk to the wood. That afternoon, I received a group email from my father, sent to the entire extended family. It was filled with dramatic language. After all we've done for her, she abandoned us in our time of need. No mention of the surgery, no mention of the twins, but what they didn't expect was the response. My cousin Mark replied first. "Didn't y'all just buy a new truck and show off a new bracelet at Thanksgiving?" And suddenly, the silence was no longer mine to carry. The truth had legs, and it was finally running. Over the next few days, the ripple effect was unreal. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started texting, calling, even messaging me on Facebook. Curious, confused, and in some cases, apologetic. Most had believed my parents' version of events for so long, they were shocked to hear anything different. I didn't go on a rant or post a dramatic rebuttal. Instead, I worked with Chloe to craft a simple response to the email thread. I recently underwent emergency surgery with serious complications. My parents refused to watch their only grandchildren because they had concert tickets. I've chosen to focus on my recovery and caring for Mason and Mia. That is all. Nothing defensive, nothing mean. Just the truth. And that was enough. Support started pouring in. Cousin Mark's wife dropped off meals at my apartment, unprompted. Another cousin, someone I barely knew, offered to babysit a few hours a week for free. Elise continued helping with the twins, showing up like clockwork every morning with patience, snacks, and a quiet warmth that made the house feel less lonely. Chloe came by more often, too. At first it was awkward, cautious, tentative. But one evening, as we sat on the floor folding laundry while the twins played with blocks, she said softly, "They always made it seem like you were the one pulling away. I didn't realize they were the ones pushing you out." I looked at her and just nodded. She got it now. Through the widow support group Elise helped me find, I met others walking similar roads. Single parents, grieving spouses, people trying to start over from ground zero. It was the first time since Ryan died that I didn't feel like I was drowning. I had lost so much. But somehow, in the middle of all that loss, I was starting to build something real, something mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel ashamed of choosing peace. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail, handwritten, addressed in my mother's familiar cursive. I stared at it for a long time, unsure if I should even open it. Part of me wanted to toss it straight in the trash. But curiosity won. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and slowly unfolded the pages. It wasn't what I expected. No guilt trips, no demands, just something close to real. She wrote, "Watching you build a life without our help has forced me to look at who I've been as a mother. I was jealous of your independence. I didn't understand your strength, and instead of supporting it, I resented it. You did need me, but not the way I wanted to be needed. I'm so sorry." She went on to explain how they'd sold their boat, let go of the timeshare, and were living in a modest condo across town. My dad had even taken a part-time job at a hardware store to help cover their expenses. No request for money, no pressure to forgive, just the truth, or at least an attempt at it. I showed the letter to Chloe, and she raised an eyebrow. "They've been talking about writing to you for weeks," she said. "I think they're finally realizing they don't get to play the victims this time." I didn't respond right away. I needed time to process it. After everything they'd put me through, I couldn't just forget. But there was something different in those pages. Humility, maybe. Or the beginning of it. That night, I sat in bed looking at old family photos. And for once, I didn't feel anger. I felt distance. Healthy, steady distance. A boundary I had finally built strong enough to hold. A year after the surgery, I finally agreed to meet them, my parents, at a quiet cafe near my new neighborhood in the outskirts of Denver. No grand reunion, no emotional fanfare, just coffee, a neutral table, and a chance to see if this change they spoke of was more than words. When they walked in, I almost didn't recognize them. My father, once towering and stern, seemed smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. My mother, always polished in designer coats, wore simple jeans and a sweater. They looked human. We sat down. Awkward silence at first. Then my father cleared his throat and spoke in a voice I barely recognized. "I've been a terrible father," he said, eyes glassy, "and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect forgiveness, Alyssa, but I want you to know, I see it now." My mother didn't reach for my hand, but she did look me in the eye. "We've been going to therapy," she said. "Family counseling. It was Chloe's idea. We didn't want to, at first, but it's helped us see how far off track we've gone." I didn't make promises. I didn't hug them. Instead, I pulled out a small photo of Mason and Mia playing in the backyard of our new home. "They're happy," I said simply. My dad swallowed hard. Would it be possible, someday, to know them? I let the question sit between us for a beat before answering. "That depends on your actions. Not your words. If you're serious, if you're consistent, we can talk about short, supervised visits. But understand this, my kids will only have relationships with people who respect their mother." And with that, I stood. Not from bitterness, but from strength. The kind I had built myself, without them. Walking away from that cafe, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken either. What I felt was stillness. A deep, steady kind of peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't about punishing them. It never had been. It was about drawing a line, one they could no longer cross without accountability. For the longest time I thought love meant sacrifice, even if it hurt. But now, I know better. Love without respect isn't love at all. It's manipulation in disguise. If you've ever been made to feel like choosing yourself is selfish, let me tell you, it's not. It's survival. It's sanity. It's strength. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and for your children, is to walk away from the people who only show up when it benefits them. Not everyone deserves access to you just because they share your blood. Family is supposed to protect, not abandon. Support, not drain. And when they fail to meet that, it's okay, more than okay, to let them go. If my story feels familiar, if you've ever had to rebuild from betrayal or stand alone when you should have been held, just know this. You're not alone. Your peace matters. Your voice matters. And your boundaries are not up for debate. Leave a comment. Share your story. Or just write one. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet, steady decision to never let someone make you feel small again. And if you felt something from this story, I hope you'll stick around. There's more truth to tell, and you belong in the conversation.